Well, with the recent premiere of Season 2 on Netflix, Narcos is clearly something on everyone's minds, but before we get into that, let's venture back and remember how Season 1 really was. Hey guys, it's Kevin again, and this is going to be a review for a show that I meant to review last year. I don't know why I didn't review it. This show just somehow got under my radar, but everyone has told me to review it since. I've heard so many great things about this show, and I know Season 2 recently premiered, but before I review Season 2, I obviously need to review Season 1, and that, of course, is for Narcos. Now, this is a show that, like I said, I meant to review last year. I don't know what happened here. I don't know how I didn't review Season 1 or, why that didn't end up happening, but for whatever reason I didn't, and it's too bad because I really did want to see the show, and I wish that I was caught up, but the good thing is now I am caught up. But let's get into Season 1 overall. Season 1 of Narcos was a show that I was definitely looking forward to. I was definitely looking forward to seeing, the life of Pablo Escobar, seeing what the life was going to be like of him, which we'll get into the plot in a second. But overall, what I think is Season 1 of Narcos, I think this is a show that has really great potential. I think it has a really good cast overall, but unfortunately, because of how great some other crime shows have been recently, I was a little bit disappointed by this first season. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think this is a bad show. I actually really did enjoy the show. I just didn't love it in the way I wanted to. And I know, you guys can say whatever you want, but I feel like the show is a lot more capable, and I'll talk about that when we get to it. But let's get to the plot of Narcos, because the plot of the show is really, I think, the thing that drew everyone in. Basically, it focuses on the character of Pablo Escobar, who is one of the most notorious drug lords of all time. He was someone that wanted to rise to power in Colombia, and he became, one of the most notorious sort of drug, in this drug cartel and everything, in the Medallion cartel, I think it was called, or something like that. But he basically, this is a guy that obviously everyone wants to go after, and it basically just shows his life, his rise and fall throughout the years, and that's basically the best way I can describe Narcos. There's definitely more to it, but that's like the best way I can describe it, and the plot, I think, here is really, really great. That's something I definitely really did like. By the way, guys, because the way the show is done, I'm not going to talk about everything that happens in this season, just because there's so much stuff that happens. I'm going to talk about the key events, and I'll mainly talk about the finale. That's what I really do want to talk about, because Season 2 is here. I just feel like I should do that. But let's get into the show first by talking about the cast. Now, much like American Crime Story, The People vs. O.J. Simpson, where you have a very notorious figure, this is a character that you really need to get right as Pablo Escobar. And Wagner Moura, I think, is someone that probably worried a lot of people, because this guy is not actually Spanish. He's Brazilian, believe it or not, and I really wasn't sure how he was going to do. You could tell he has the look, but does he have the voice? And I have to say that for a character like Pablo Escobar, who is someone that's very hard to get behind, I think they really did it pretty well. He really did a great job. I really did love his character. And honestly, even though you know the stuff that Pablo Escobar is doing, and you know how maniacal and just, conniving of a guy he is, you kind of understand what he's doing. This is a guy that is kind of looked at as a godlike figure at first. He's someone that's looked at as a Robin Hood, an anti-hero, someone that's going to help Colombia, because at the time Colombia was in this really bad state. He's someone that wants to clean it up and make it better, and he gets himself involved in the drug business, and it gets a lot more complicated, but I thought he did a really good job. You honestly really do sympathize with his character. What I did like is that they're not there to get you to, condone the actions that he was doing. That's not what the show's doing. It's blatantly telling you what he was doing was wrong. It very much tells you that you obviously should not follow what he's doing. What it is trying to show is why he did these things, and I think that's something they did very well. They very much fleshed out his character. I really did love what they did with him overall, and I really thought that he absolutely was fantastic and definitely deserves that Emmy nomination he got. He is incredible on this show, and he alone is enough to make this show. And if the entire show was just about Pablo Escobar's rise to power, I would absolutely love this show. Unfortunately, it's not. Because while we have the whole story going on with Escobar's rise to power, we also have a story of these DEA agents who are trying to apprehend him and trying to bring him down and just trying to do whatever they can to catch him. And while I think Boyd Holbrook, our main narrator and basically our titular character of the show, does a good job overall, I think he definitely is a very good actor, his character Steve Murphy is particularly just very uninteresting. And it's not so much that he's a bad character. I don't think that he's a bad guy. I don't think that he did anything wrong in the show. I think Boyd Holbrook really does have it. The problem is this character is extremely bland, and I know you guys are saying, well, that's kind of the point. He's not supposed to be anything else. He's just a DEA agent who's trying to help his family. I understand that, but it's mainly because of the fact of what I've seen from things when we're living in, an age of TV where we have all these different shows portraying all these different criminals, and you have characters like on American Crime Story and The Night Of, where you can see that there's so much more than just that occupation. I really want to see that more from Murphy, and we really don't see that at all. This character is very shallow, very one-dimensional, and really the only motivation he seems to have is that he just can't bring down Escobar, and you understand why he's going after him. It's not that. It's not that you don't understand why he's going after him. You totally understand why. You can totally understand that. It's just, I never really felt like I cared that much about his character. I really wished, that they did develop his character more, but unfortunately just didn't. I think Boyd Holbrook did a great job, but the character just wasn't that interesting, and for me, I thought he fell very flat. And Pedro Pascal, I thought, was a little bit better. I will definitely say that. I think Pedro Pascal, the character of Javier Pena, I did like the character overall. I thought the two of them worked very well together. Javier's just a little bit more fun. He definitely has some of the more comedic moments, and he's also someone who has a reason to go after Escobar because he is in fact Spanish, and he's someone that witnesses Escobar firsthand. He's brought in to be an agent, and I thought the teaming up between those two, they worked very well together. I really did like their characters, and I thought their interactions were just very interesting. It's just the characters themselves just weren't that interesting, and that was something I didn't really, understand why we chose to focus on them so much. I'm glad that they kind of pulled the rug away from them in the last few episodes because they just didn't really do much with these characters. Now, I don't know if they do more of them in Season 2, but as far as Season 1 goes, they're not bad, they're just very one-dimensional and just very uninteresting. So yeah, it's safe to say that I don't love that aspect of the show, and especially from Joanna Christie. Why is Connie a main character this season? I honestly have no idea why she is. She is extremely one-dimensional, she does really nothing in the show, and the most we get of her is a plotline that starts up and just kind of goes away. I mean, she has a reason for going after Escobar and what he's doing, but at no point does it feel like she is a important character of the show. I don't know why she's a main character. I don't know why she's in the show so much. She wasn't that great. I didn't think that she was a bad actress per se. I just didn't feel like they gave her much to work with, and I wanted to see more from her, but they just didn't, and unfortunately she wasn't, really someone who I care about that much. And like I said, the relation between Connie and Steve, while it might be good, I just didn't really care about their relationship overall, unfortunately, because they just didn't really do much with it. The other characters here I thought were really good. Most of the people that are in Escobar's crime ring, you really do understand, because Escobar is someone who he basically deals with things in two ways. Either he's going to negotiate you, or he's just gonna fucking kill you. I mean, that's how he is. This guy is crazy. He really is, and he screws a lot of people over this season, and a lot of the characters, it was very sad to see them go through this, realizing that they've been working with this guy all this time that essentially is just going to betray them. And a lot of those characters I thought were very good, like the Ochoa brothers. I thought they were very interesting. I liked what they did with them, but especially the character of the character I liked the most out of all of them was Gustavo, Escobar's cousin. I thought he was just really interesting. This is basically Escobar's right-hand man. He's someone that will always stick by Escobar, but he's also someone who doesn't really understand all the evil stuff that Escobar is doing, and while he kind of just follows his lead, it's because of the fact that they are family, and he's always going to stick by him, and he's one of the best characters in the show. I really love what Juan Pablo Raba did with the character. I thought he did a really great job. He definitely was very interesting, and one of the best parts of the show by far. Luis Guzman was also someone that really surprised me as Gotcha, one of the characters, someone else from the Medallion Cartel. I thought he really did a great job. I mean, this is someone that we're used to seeing as a comedian, and you really do see him as this menacing figure, and I really like what they did with him. He definitely was really great, as well as the character of Tata. I like what they did with Tata overall, Escobar's wife, someone who endlessly supports him. I thought that she was very good, and I think all of that definitely was very well done. All the performances across the board are great. I really can't think of someone who was bad in this show. I think everyone really did do a great job. I think everyone really did give it their all in these performances, and they all were really great here. I think, universally across the board, all the acting really is fantastic. And the directing as well of the show, I think really is great. I think the director, whoever directed the show, they really did know what tone to give this. I mean, this is a very gritty, dark, realistic show, and I very much should like that. Nothing here feels like it didn't happen, Everything here feels like, all right, that probably happened, You could tell they definitely did their research. You could tell they studied very hard, and that they definitely tried to portray the story as much as possible, as accurate as possible. And I think they did that really well. I really did get into the story, and I thought that was very good. My main problem with this show by far is the writing, and it's not so much that the writing's bad. I don't think the writing's bad. It's just a lot of times this feels less like a TV show and more like just a more interesting version of a history lesson you'd have in a class of some sort. And that's something that kind of irritated me, because this is a show that moves extremely fast, and I mean really, really fast. They go through more than, I believe, 30 years just in this first season, and it moves by way too quickly. And as good as the stuff with Escobar is, because I really did think they fleshed out his character very well, and they really did show all aspects of him, a lot of times what we're seeing is less of, one story, and more of just little fragments of a story. It doesn't feel like it goes together. Things happen, and then you're like, well, how'd that happen? Where did this come from? Things just really catch us off guard, and I think that's something that the show really did have a problem with. And definitely a lot of the events just kind of come out of nowhere, especially the way episodes just randomly start. There's not really a reason why you understand why it's happening, but a lot of the stuff, it's 2 weeks later or a month later or a year later, and it just really is kind of confusing as to where we are in the timeline. It's not so much in Escobar's part, that part I definitely understood. It's more of the DEA part. I thought their characters, like I said, were extremely underwritten. I thought they could have done a lot more with them, and they just didn't really do much. And it's kind of surprising, mainly because of the fact that our character of Steve narrates this entire damn thing, and that's something that could have worked if they really handled it right, because a lot of people compare this to Goodfellas, and I will say the first episode, I'm like, oh yeah, totally, I definitely am getting that Martin Scorsese type vibe. But after that first episode, I really started to dislike the narration, and I have to tell you why. It's mainly because they don't use it as a way to develop Murphy's character. In Goodfellas, this was a way that we understood Ray Liotta's character. All the dastardly evil thing, not evil, but all the crazy things that the gang was doing. This was our way to understand why they were doing it and really get us to get behind the character. That was something they did very well, or even show what he was thinking in his mind at that exact moment. That's not really what they're doing here. What they're doing here is basically telling us things that we probably could have just seen rather than hear. And a lot of the time in the narration, this is a show that really does not treat you like you're smart. I mean, this is a show that clearly thinks that we're gonna get bored. This is a show that definitely feels like we don't know what's going on, and it makes us feel like we're dumb, honestly. I think this is a show that the narrated parts really made me feel like I'm missing something. I'm like, okay, why are you telling me this? What's really going on here? Some of it's very informative. I definitely will say that. I think some of it was very interesting. I think what they did with it was really good, but a lot of it is just moving through events very quickly that I much rather would have seen played out, and I think that's something that the show definitely had a real problem with. Definitely, I think that's something that I thought, like I said, I think Boyd Holbrook did a really good job narrating. It's just because of the fact that it didn't really have much to do with his character. One, we're wondering why he knew all this, or why he's telling us all this. Two, it's a lot of it's like, yeah, no shit, obviously that's happening. Like, most of the stuff he was telling us, I probably could have just found out on my own because I really didn't need it. Now, I'm not going to say everyone's like that, but I feel most people who watch the show, it's very easy to understand. It's not a show that's difficult to understand at all, and the show treats it like it's one of the hardest things ever. I mean, the show treats it like it's an episode of Mr. Robot or The Leftovers, and it's really not. I mean, those are shows that they don't need those narrated things. That's why that show's really great. This show, the narration is just kind of a gimmick, and it didn't really work in the way I wanted to, unfortunately. I thought it'd be one of the best parts of the show, but unfortunately, as the show went on, the narration started to get more increasingly annoying, and I'm glad that as it went on, they did less and less of it, because I really hope that's something they don't do as much in season 2. It definitely detracted from the show. It's actually kind of distracting at times, and definitely I thought was very maddening the way they did that. I really was not a fan of that. So that's something I don't really think they did very well. But like I said, telling the story of Escobar, seeing what he was doing, I thought all of that was very well done. You know, you could definitely tell they did their research there. And especially finding out what life was like in Colombia. I mean, I didn't realize the extent of how bad things were back then. Colombia really was one of the worst possible places to be in the 70s and 80s. I mean, this was a town full of poverty and war and all this kind of stuff was going on, and you could totally understand why everyone thought that Escobar was going to be the one to save them all, because he wanted to put himself out there, he wanted to save them, but he just grew too powerful, he grew too powerful, he grew too, I think just everything went his way, and you know that eventually it's all going to come crashing down. I think it's something they told very well. It's kind of a bittersweet story on Escobar's part, and that's something I definitely really did love that the show did. I thought that was very interesting, and I thought everything going on there, I definitely really did like. Another plus I will definitely give to the show is the cinematography, because this is by far one of the best shot shows Netflix has ever done, and maybe one of the best shot shows on TV, mainly because they are actually filming in these beautiful places, and it's incredible to watch. I mean, just the setting of Colombia, seeing what that place is like, it's very different from America, and I thought it was really cool the way they contrast between America and Colombia. I definitely really did like that, and especially when you would see, what Holbrook, not Holbrook, that's Boyd Holbrook, what Murphy's, that's how much I didn't really care about his character, what Murphy's life was like in America compared to what Escobar's life was like in Colombia, I thought was very well contrasted. I thought it's something they did very well, and I definitely really did enjoy that overall. I thought the settings here were just incredible, and the action in the show, holy shit, the action is crazy. I mean, you really do feel like this is one of the things the show definitely got right. They really don't hold back. They show you some pretty crazy stuff, and there's some really graphic stuff in the show. Is it too graphic? No, it's about the amount of graphic that it needs to be, but it's graphic enough that it probably couldn't be shown on any network except for Netflix. I think Netflix definitely, they went all out. I definitely applaud them for that. And I mean, there are some scenes with Escobar that you just realize how crazy this guy is. I mean, if there's any point where you're kind of sympathizing with Escobar, they very quickly make you realize that, yeah, he was not a good guy. Like, yeah, we're trying to show you what he's doing, but he's not someone to emulate. And I thought that was very well done. Very much like, I definitely really did love the way they did that, and I thought that was something they handled very well. As well as the like I said, script to the show. I don't think I told you guys this, and you guys probably know this, but 98% of the show is actually in Spanish, and I really applaud the show for that. I think it's really interesting the way they did that. The only scenes that are in English are the ones where you see Murphy and his agents and people like that. Those are the scenes that are in English. Everything else is almost universally Spanish, and it's very realistic the way that's done. I've heard many people complain about shows where, they're not actually speaking Spanish, and they should be. Like Tyrant, for example. I heard that's a show where they shouldn't be speaking English, but everyone does, and this is a show where, no, sometimes they speak English, sometimes they speak Spanish, but people like Escobar are always speaking Spanish, and that makes sense, because it's Colombia. I mean, they all speak Spanish there, and I thought it was very interesting to see, and honestly, the subtitles, I think, really went with that story. I really think never took me out of it. I was worried that it was going to take me out of it, but I was definitely able to focus on it. I was very, I definitely could tell what was going on, and I thought something they did very well. The dialogue here, I thought was really great. Some of it was a bit on the nose, I will definitely say that, and I think there are definitely some repetitive scenes, especially with the guys that are getting screwed over by Escobar. There was a bit too much of Escobar winning. I mean, obviously they depicted it well, but I think just seeing a lot of Escobar winning, it just got kind of repetitive. You need to see a little bit more, but I think the second half of the season, that's really when it got great. That's really when I get into it, and really to show me what the show is capable of, and I really did enjoy that. The score here as well, I loved all the Spanish music. I thought it was all very interesting, and I liked that it stuck to strictly Spanish stuff. I thought that was something that was very well done. But like I said, the pacing here is all over the place, in my opinion at least. I think this is something where the show itself moves very, very quickly, and I really feel the show would have benefited from two things. One, I think it definitely should have slowed down. I think there are definitely some scenes that are just too fast, and there's too much going on in the scenes, and it feels like there's too much happening too fast. Two, I feel like they definitely would have benefited from, say, 12 episodes instead of 10 episodes. If they would have had at least 2 more episodes to tell the story, I think we could have gotten more of Murphy's character. I think we could have gotten more, with what was going on. I don't think the timeline would have moved nearly as quickly as they did, because I think they went through way too many decades. I think it got way too confusing at points, and that's something that really did take me off guard. A lot of times, like, alright, where are we actually? Because I just couldn't tell where they were. Now, once Murphy told us where we were, yeah, that was helpful, and they do tell us where we are at times, but at points it just is kind of confusing because it moves so quickly. I mean, there's literally an episode where they go, I think, 2 decades into the future, and it just moved way too quickly. I wasn't as into it as the show wanted me to be, and it definitely did take me off guard. So the pacing, I thought, was definitely very all over the place, and I think definitely the show would have benefited. Hopefully it does this in Season 2, if it does slow down a bit, which I do hope it really does do once we get to Season 2, because I think this is a show that really would benefit more if it was a little bit slower paced. That's something that American Crime Story and The Night of got very, very well. Those shows took their time. They never did too much too fast, and I think this show kind of did at points. Now, not all the time, but I think definitely some stuff. I think they did do some stuff too much too fast, definitely. But now we're going to get into the spoilers, which I'm mainly going to talk about the finale and a few key things that happened. So if you guys haven't seen Narcos Season 1, do not watch the rest of this review. Go watch Narcos right now. Do I say it's really for everyone? I don't really think it's for everyone. I definitely will say that. I think if you don't like subtitles, then, don't watch it. That's definitely something I think will take people off guard. But also the fact that if you're a fan of, like, The Night of, American Crime Story, I would say check it out. Just don't expect it to be as good as those other ones. But now let's get into spoilers overall. So the first thing I want to talk about are the deaths this season, because they really did not hold back. I mean, they kill a lot of people. I mean, right in the first episode, we know the Poison died, and unfortunately, as much as now, I will say, that to me was the weakest death of the show. Why? I don't think they should have shown the first episode. I don't think they need to do that. I understand, obviously, they were trying to show this is how we got here, but it just felt too much like, this is one of those things where we're going into the past, and I completely forgot that happened. I mean, again, because of how quickly the show moved, I didn't realize that we were all the way there. And then when Poison died, I mean, yeah, he got screwed over, but it just didn't really impact me in the way it wanted. What really did impact me was when that boy Jamie died on that plane crash, when Escobar told him to get on that plane, and he had he was about to play the tape, and the plane exploded, and Escobar knew that the plane was going to explode. That is the perfect example of how you, one, show how Escobar is, but also show how conniving and manipulative he is, but also show you can't mess with him, and I think that was something they did very well. What I really did love, though, was the death of Gustavo, because Gustavo, like I said, was someone who, through thick and thin, was always on Escobar's side. Even if he went too far, he was his right-hand man, and just seeing him getting tortured and beaten, even though, you kind of are rooting for Carrillo, because of the fact that these characters are extremely undeveloped and you don't really care about them, I did feel really bad for Gustavo. That was probably the hardest scene to watch this season, was seeing Gustavo die, and then when Pablo realizes that he's gone and he's just, coming to that realization, was very sad to see. I thought that Wagner Moura, just in that scene in general, did an incredible job, and of course, after this, he decides that he's going to run away. He decides to make his own prison, and basically from there, now he has this prison, but it's not the prison like you and I would. I mean, this is a prison full of hookers and just bad people, and I thought that was interesting. But then you have Murphy's side, who basically are trying to get to Escobar at any, at all costs, which that part I thought worked well. Like I said, I think their motivation definitely you see, and then what I mean by the motivation is that you understand that they just can't get this guy. But that's it. That's really all they did with Murphy, besides, he's just kind of incompetent, and he can't really get a hold of Escobar, because Escobar's only, always 100, just so many steps ahead of them, and you definitely do see that here. And that's something that definitely greatly did annoy me at points, is the way that Escobar would always win. But I also did like that, because at points, like I said, I was rooting for Escobar. So then we get to the finale. I mean, at this point, they brought in military troops, and not even the, FBI. They've brought in the military to get rid of Escobar, and Escobar ends up holding I believe, the mayor of the state of office hostage, something like that, and he's trying to interrogate the mayor, trying to figure out what his motive is, basically trying to get him on his side, doing the negotiation thing. Luckily, the army is able to get him out of there, and I thought that definitely was a very well done scene. I did think the stuff they did with Tata and Escobar, I thought was very well done. The way that you had Tata starting to realize that maybe her husband isn't who she is, and maybe, isn't who she thought he was, and maybe she shouldn't trust him as much. I thought that was very well done. I'm looking forward to seeing where that story is going to go in season 2, because clearly Tata can tell that while she obviously does love her husband, he's not the greatest guy, and he obviously is not really someone that she can condone what he's doing. I mean, after everything he's done, it's kind of hard to get behind what he's doing. I know a lot of people said it just feels like a random thing, but it made sense to me. I mean, Tata was someone who always stuck by him, but she didn't really know the full extent of what he was doing, and I think that was interesting. Valeria was a character I just never really cared much about, so the whole scene with her and Tata, where she's trying to get Tata to think that, she can't trust Escobar, I thought was a good scene, but I just hope they develop her character a little bit more, because again, she was just a character I really could never get into. But then, of course, we get to the ending, where once again, Escobar does get away, but what I love about the ending is that this does motivate Murphy. Basically, they realize that they're not going to give in to him anymore. They've given in to him way too much, they've listened to his every demand, they've done everything he's told them to do, and they're not going to negotiate. They no longer want to condemn him, they want to straight up kill him, and that perfectly sets up season 2, where we already know that Escobar is going to die, and I think it was a perfect way to set that up. I definitely really did love that, and perfectly got me interested into season 2. The other thing I really do like about the ending of Season 1 is that Escobar's now on his own. He doesn't have all of these guys now. Most of them died when the army obviously, infiltrated the base and everything, and it's going to be interesting to seeing if Escobar can be as powerful on his own. I mean, we've already seen what sets the guy off. We've already seen what gets him angry. We've already seen how, conniving and methodical he really is and things like that. But the question is, can he still be just as powerful on his own? That's something as well that I think Season 2 is definitely going to be interesting to answer. I mean, like I said, we obviously know he's going to die, but is he going to be able to survive on his own, and how long will he survive on his own, and how long will it take for Murphy and for Javier to get to him? We'll have to see next season. That's something else I'm definitely interested in exploring. So overall, guys, Season 1 of Narcos, I thought was very good. I thought overall it was a very interesting show. I didn't hate it by any means. I just feel that it wasn't as good as I wanted it to be, but there is some really good stuff I think that they set up in Season 2. Obviously we know that Escobar is going to die, but who else is going to die with that? I feel like definitely Escobar is going to find a way to get himself out of this. I mean, obviously we know he dies, but there's 10 episodes left, so it takes a while for him to die. We'll have to see what happens with that. The journey to that's going to be interesting. As well as Tata, like I said, she doesn't really trust her husband right now. I'm looking forward to seeing that. The president isn't going to give in to him. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens there. And then I really hope, the one thing I hope they do is try to develop Murphy and Connie more, because I just don't really care about these characters in the way they want me to, as well as Javier. I want to care about Javier, and I know that Murphy thinks that Javier was double-crossing him. I love that Murphy wasn't actually double-crossing them, that he wasn't just a double agent. He was actually working with them, and that it seems like that other agent, the black guy, I don't know his name because they never gave him a name, but the black agent, it seems like he might be the one that's double-crossing them, so that's going to be interesting as well. But overall, guys, I really did enjoy this season of Narcos, and I'm going to give Season 1 a 4 out of 5 or a B+. Not as good as I want it to be, definitely a little bit disappointing, but the stuff that was great is really great, such as Wagner, Moura, and the storyline of Escobar, and the stuff they showed with him I thought was really great. But like I said, the story in general I thought was very messy. It was interesting, but I just felt that if it had it been a little bit slower paced, and had they not rushed a lot of the action and just rushed through a bunch of events, I think the show would have been a little bit more impactful, and hopefully that stuff will slow down a bit once we get to Season 2, which only has to go through 1 year, and hopefully because of that, I will like Season 2 a lot more, and hopefully, especially characters like Murphy and Connie, who they want us to root for, will be a lot more rootable when we get to Season 2. But overall, guys, that's my review of Narcos Season 1. Let me know what you guys thought of this season if you have seen it. What do you think of Season 1 overall? Are you looking forward to Season 2? Please, whatever you guys do not spoil Season 2 for me. I will review Season 2, Episode 1 tomorrow. That review will be up tomorrow. I can promise you that. I'm definitely looking forward to Season 2. Like I said, hopefully it's much better than Season 1. I didn't think Season 1 was bad. I just was kind of disappointed by it. But that's my review. Hope you guys enjoy it, and I will see you guys in my next, which will be for tonight's episode of Fear the Walking Dead, which hopefully does what I want it to do, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.